Happy Days was once seen as a symbol of fun, innocence, and American youth. But behind the bright smiles of its cast were silent tragedies, illness, sudden death, fading careers, and loneliness that lasted until the end of their lives. Today, we look back at 11 Happy Days cast members and discover how they really died, in stories more tragic than any episode. Tom Bosley as Howard Cunningham. Tom Bosley was born on October 1st, 1927, in Chicago, Illinois. At 47, he stepped into Happy Days as Howard Cunningham, the warm, steady father whose kindness became the emotional anchor of the show. Audiences saw him as America's dad, a reassuring presence who seemed untouched by the world's darker edges. But behind that comforting image was a man carrying far more heartbreak and struggle than his character ever revealed. Long before Happy Days, Bosley had endured wounds that never quite healed. He married dancer Jean Elliott in 1962, and together they had a daughter, Amy. Losing Jean to lung cancer in 1978 devastated him. Just 2 years later, he remarried. But the grief from that first loss stayed with him for the rest of his life. Even as the world celebrated him, Bosley privately navigated a grief that fame could never soften. His career, too, brought its own frustrations. Though he had won a Tony Award for Fiorello and proved his talent across stage and screen, the success of Howard Cunningham became a double-edged sword. Hollywood increasingly cast him in gentle fatherly roles, leaving him quietly aware that he had been boxed into a persona far smaller than his range deserved. As he grew older, the battles shifted from emotional to physical. Bosley fought lung cancer, the same disease that took his first wife, and although he survived the initial struggle, his health never fully recovered. Complications mounted, and a staph infection weakened him further. When heart failure eventually followed, his decline became inevitable. On October 19, 2010, he passed away at 83 in a Los Angeles hospital, leaving behind a legacy cherished by millions, but a final chapter marked by silence, frailty, and the slow unraveling of a man who had once embodied stability. Today, Tom Bosley is remembered not only as Howard Cunningham, but as an actor whose warmth shaped an entire era of American television, even as his own life was marked by loss, illness, and a quiet resilience the public rarely saw. Erin Moran as Joni Cunningham. Erin Moran was born on October 18, 1960, in Burbank, California. At just 13 years old, she stepped into Happy Days as Joni Cunningham, the bright-spirited little sister whose charm helped define the show's heart. For nearly a decade, she grew up in America's living rooms, adored by millions who believed her future would shine just as brightly. But when the cameras stopped rolling, Moran faced a world far harsher than the one she knew as Joni. After Happy Days and its short-lived spin-off, Joni Loves Chachi, her career faltered. Roles disappeared, casting calls slowed, and the industry that once embraced her seemed to forget she existed. The loss of work triggered a painful spiral of financial instability and depression. In 2010, she lost her California home to foreclosure and, with nowhere else to go, moved to Indiana with her husband, Steve Fleischman. There, far from Hollywood, they lived in a modest trailer, a quiet, heartbreaking contrast to the fame she once enjoyed. Moran spoke openly about her battles with depression, describing the loneliness of aging as a former child star and the emotional toll of constantly chasing opportunities that never came. Her final year was the darkest. In late 2016, she was diagnosed with stage 4 squamous cell carcinoma of the throat, a brutal disease that progressed with devastating speed. By early 2017, she could no longer speak or eat, relying on a feeding tube as her body weakened. Rumors swirled in the tabloids about drugs and reckless behavior, but toxicology reports later confirmed there were no illegal substances in her system, only the unforgiving advance of cancer. On April 22, 2017, Erin Moran died at 56, passing away quietly in her Indiana home, surrounded by family as her husband held her hand during her final moments. Today, Erin Moran is remembered with a bittersweet tenderness, a talented girl America watched grow up, only to watch her fade away far too soon. Her life stands as one of the most heartbreaking stories in the Happy Days legacy, a reminder of how fragile fame can be and how deeply a bright spirit can struggle once the spotlight goes dark. Pat Morita as Arnold Takahashi. Pat Morita, born on June 28, 1932, in Ileton, California. He was 42 years old when he first appeared on Happy Days as Arnold Takahashi, the cheerful, joke-cracking owner of Arnold's Drive-In, whose warmth and quirky humor made him one of the show's most beloved recurring characters. Though he would later become world-famous as Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid, Morita's road to television success was carved from hardship so deep that it seemed almost impossible he would one day make people laugh. His childhood was marked by pain and confinement. At just 2 years old, he developed spinal tuberculosis, or Pott's disease, which left him immobilized in a full-body cast for years. From age 2 to 11, he lived almost entirely in hospitals, listening to doctors warn his parents that he might never walk again. Yet after an experimental spinal fusion surgery at 11, he miraculously regained the ability to stand, only to face another injustice. Fresh out of the hospital, he was classified as an enemy alien during World War II and escorted by the FBI to the Gila River internment camp in Arizona, where he and his family lived for nearly 3 years. Morita would later describe the experience as being imprisoned for nothing more than my face. Adulthood brought new heartbreak. In 1956, when he was 24, Morita witnessed his father's death in a hit-and-run accident, a trauma that haunted him for decades. Though he eventually found his calling in stand-up comedy and acting, the emotional weight of his past never fully lifted. His success on Happy Days was a triumph, but behind the scenes he struggled in private with severe alcoholism. According to his widow, Evelyn Guerrero Morita, he could disguise it while working, but the addiction slowly eroded his health and stability. By the time Morita reached worldwide acclaim as Mr. Miyagi, his gentle wisdom on screen stood in stark contrast to the battles he was fighting off-screen. Years of drinking weakened his body, and complications mounted as he aged. On November 24, 2005, Pat Morita died at 73 from kidney failure, believed to be tied to his lifelong struggle with alcohol. Today, his legacy lives in 2 unforgettable forms: the joyful, welcoming Arnold of Happy Days and the wise, compassionate Mr. Miyagi, roles born from a man who overcame more pain than he ever allowed the world to see. Al Molinaro as Al Del Vecchio. Born on June 24, 1919, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Al Molinaro was 56 years old when he joined Happy Days as Al Del Vecchio, the gentle, soft-spoken owner of Arnold's Drive-In, famous for his warm smile, kind heart, and the catchphrase, "Yep, yep, yep, yep." His presence brought a comforting innocence to the show, a calm center amid the chaos of teenage adventures. Off-screen, Molinaro embodied much of that same goodness, building a steady career rooted in kindness, humility, and a face audiences trusted instantly. Yet even as he became a familiar figure in American homes, Molinaro's body was quietly beginning to betray him. Throughout his later life, he battled a series of chronic health issues that weakened his circulatory system and left him increasingly fragile. Friends often described him as a gentle soul trapped in a body that was slowly failing him. While he continued acting in commercials and embracing the nostalgia surrounding Happy Days, his declining health limited his ability to work, pushing him into a quieter chapter, far from the spotlight he once enjoyed. By the early 2000s, Molinaro's condition had worsened, and complications began piling up. Gallstones led to a serious infection, and the resulting circulatory issues proved too severe for his aging body to overcome. On October 30th, 2015, he passed away at 96 from complications related to gallbladder disease, leaving behind a legacy defined not by tragedy, but by warmth. Today, Al Molinaro is remembered as one of television's kindest faces, a man whose gentle spirit helped shape the heart of Happy Days, even as he quietly endured the slow, difficult decline that marked his final years. Gary Marshall as creator/guest star. Gary Marshall was born on November 13, 1934, in the Bronx, New York. As the creator of Happy Days, he was the architect of its warmth, nostalgia, and joyful spirit, the man who gave America a fictional family it would cherish for generations. He also appeared occasionally on the show in small guest roles, always bringing the same playful energy that shaped his writing. To the cast, Marshall was more than a producer. He was the heartbeat of the entire series, the guiding force whose laugh filled the set and whose instincts shaped every character. Behind his easy humor and gentle leadership, Marshall carried the weight of a demanding career that stretched across decades. He built a remarkable television empire with shows like Laverne and Shirley and Mork and Mindy, then transitioned to film with hits like Pretty Woman and The Princess Diaries. Yet the relentless pace of his work took a physical toll. In his 80s, he underwent heart surgery, a procedure meant to stabilize his health, but one that opened the door to complications his body could no longer fight. After the operation, Marshall developed a severe infection that rapidly worsened. What began as a routine recovery spiraled into a fatal chain of complications. On July 19, 2016, he died at 81 from pneumonia brought on by post-operative issues, a sudden and devastating loss that stunned Hollywood. For the Happy Days family, his death felt like the collapse of the foundation beneath them. The man who had created their world and held them together long after the series ended was gone in an instant. Today, Gary Marshall is remembered as the father of Happy Days, a storyteller who believed in kindness, second chances, and characters who loved each other deeply. His legacy lives on not only in the shows he created, but in the countless actors, writers, and friends who saw him as the soul of an era and whose hearts he left forever changed. Beatrice Colin as Marcia Sims. Beatrice Colin, born on January 10, 1948, in New York City. She was 26 years old when she first appeared on Happy Days as Marcia Sims, the cheerful, quick-talking car hop whose bright smile and easy warmth made her a memorable part of the show's early seasons. Audiences loved her light-hearted presence, and Colin brought to the role a natural charm shaped by her upbringing in a family of writers and performers. Off-screen, she built a devoted home life with actor Patrick Cronin, whom she married in 1977, and together they raised two sons, James and Charles. But behind her sunny screen persona lived a woman fighting a lifelong battle with illness. As a young adult, Colin survived Hodgkin's disease after undergoing aggressive radiation treatments, a victory that came with long-term consequences she could not foresee. Years later, those treatments were believed to have contributed to the development of her second, far deadlier illness, lung cancer. When the disease returned, it struck swiftly and mercilessly, spreading to her brain and leaving her body increasingly frail. Still, she fought with remarkable strength, determined to be present for her family even as her condition worsened. Her final night remains one of the most poignant stories in the Happy Days legacy. On November 18, 1999, at just 51 years old, Beatrice Colin passed away from metastatic lung cancer, on the very evening her son James was opening his high school production of The Man Who Came to Dinner, a play written by his great-grandfather, Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright George S. Kaufman. Honoring her last wish, James went on stage despite losing his mother only hours before, a testament to the resilience and artistic spirit she had instilled in him. Colin left behind her husband of 22 years and their 2 sons, who continue to speak of her with deep affection. Today, she is remembered not only as the lively car hop from Happy Days, but as a woman of immense courage, someone who greeted life's greatest hardships with grace, humor, and unwavering devotion to her family. Marion Ross as Marion Cunningham. Born on October 25, 1928, in Watertown, Minnesota, Marion Ross was 46 years old when she joined Happy Days as Marion Cunningham, the warm, patient, endlessly loving matriarch who held the show's chaotic household together. Her gentle presence became one of the series' emotional pillars, shaping the image of the ideal American mother for an entire generation. But while Ross radiated steadiness on screen, her real life carried shadows far more complex. Behind her bright smile was a marriage marked by deep heartbreak. Ross spent years enduring repeated infidelity from her husband, navigating a cycle of betrayal that slowly eroded her confidence and pushed her into long periods of depression. She once described those years as feeling like she was performing happiness while privately sinking under the weight of disappointment. Even as Happy Days soared, she often returned home to loneliness and emotional exhaustion, hiding her pain behind the warmth audiences adored. When the series ended, Ross continued acting, but age brought its own challenges. Over time, her health began to decline, and she developed muscle degeneration and mobility issues that gradually limited her ability to work. The once vibrant actress who effortlessly embodied strength and grace now faced the quiet struggles of aging, fatigue, frailty, and the slow fading of public life. By the early 2020s, she stepped away from Hollywood almost entirely, retreating into the privacy she had long been denied during her peak years. As of 2025, Marion Ross is 96 years old, living a secluded and peaceful life with family close by. Though no longer active in the industry, her legacy endures through the character she made iconic, a mother figure whose warmth touched millions. And behind that legacy lies a woman who survived heartbreak, rebuilt herself through resilience, and faced the twilight of life with dignity and quiet strength. Anson Williams as Patsy Weber. Anson Williams was born on September 25, 1949 in Los Angeles, California. He was 25 years old when he joined Happy Days as Patsy Weber, the sweet, eager, slightly awkward teen whose earnest charm made him one of the show's most lovable characters. For a generation of viewers, Patsy was pure optimism. But like many actors who became icons too young, Williams found adulthood far more complicated than the world he helped bring to life on screen. Fame arrived early, and the transition out of teen idol status was painful. After Happy Days, Williams struggled to redefine himself professionally. While others kept acting, he discovered that directing brought him a deeper sense of purpose. He rebuilt his career behind the camera, earning respect for his work on Beverly Hills, 90210, Charmed, and Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Yet success did not shield him from personal heartbreak. He endured 2 difficult divorces, including the end of a 32-year marriage that left him emotionally drained and isolated, a period he later described as one of the darkest of his life. Health challenges followed. Williams was diagnosed with colon cancer, a battle that forced him to confront his own mortality. In August 2025, he underwent a major surgery and openly shared the painful depths of his recovery, describing nights of fear, exhaustion, and determination. Fans rallied behind him, and their support became a lifeline as he fought to regain strength. Despite the illness, he remained active, continuing to write, direct, and stay engaged with his community. Amid the hardship came an unexpected grace. After both suffered profound personal losses, Williams reconnected with Sharon Meharry, a longtime acquaintance who became the steady, healing presence he no longer believed he would find. The two married in 2023, marking a new chapter defined not by fame, but by companionship and gratitude. Today, Anson Williams is still alive at 76, living in California, and continuing to work as a director, author, and public figure. He remains deeply involved in civic life and even ran for mayor of Ojai, embracing the belief that it's never too late to get it right. His story, from teen idol to survivor, is a testament to resilience, reinvention, and the quiet strength of choosing hope again and again. Ron Howard as Richie Cunningham. Born on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma, Ron Howard was only 20 years old when he stepped into Happy Days as Richie Cunningham, the wholesome, red-haired boy next door whose optimism and sincerity became the moral compass of the series. To the world, Howard was the embodiment of youthful innocence, first as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, and then as Richie. But behind the bright smile of America's favorite son was a young man quietly overwhelmed by pressure, fear, and expectations no one his age was prepared to carry. Growing up in Hollywood came at a steep emotional cost. From childhood, Howard lived under constant scrutiny, expected to remain polite, perfect, and mature beyond his years. The weight of being a beloved child star left him with lifelong anxiety, a persistent fear of disappointing the world that adored him. During the height of Happy Days, he struggled privately with the terror that his acting career might collapse at any moment, trapping him forever in the role of Richie, while his deeper ambitions remained unseen. His departure from the show wasn't driven by ego, but by desperation, a need to escape the shadow of his own fame before it swallowed him whole. Even as success found him behind the camera, tragedy followed him in quieter, more personal ways. Howard's mother, actress Jean Spiegel Howard, died of heart failure in 2000, just as his film How the Grinch Stole Christmas was released, a loss that haunted him deeply. Years later, his father, actor Rance Howard, suffered a long decline from heart and kidney disease, eventually passing in 2017. Howard has spoken openly about how watching both parents fade, slowly, painfully, and helplessly, left him with a profound sense of fragility and an ache that success could not soothe. The pressure of constant reinvention never eased either, while films like Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and Cinderella made him one of Hollywood's most respected directors. The fear of failure and public judgment followed him into every project. Colleagues often noted that his gentle demeanor masked a man who carried tremendous emotional strain, someone who pushed himself relentlessly, terrified that a single misstep would erase decades of work. By 2025, Ron Howard is 71 years old. He continues directing and producing, though at a slower pace, choosing projects that bring him peace rather than pressure. While the world remembers Richie Cunningham as carefree and glowing with promise, Ron Howard's journey has been far more bittersweet, defined by loss, anxiety, and the quiet burden of a life spent in the spotlight from the moment he could walk. His success remains extraordinary, but the path behind it is etched with a tenderness and sadness few ever see. Don Most as Ralph Malph. Don Most was born on August 8, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York. He was just 20 years old when he joined Happy Days as Ralph Malph, the goofy, fast-talking prankster whose catchphrase, "I still got it," lit up the screen with effortless charm. His character was all laughter and mischief, a reminder of carefree youth. But like many actors who played comic relief, Most carried burdens behind the scenes that contrasted sharply with the joy he gave to audiences. After Happy Days ended, Most faced the difficult reality of being permanently associated with a character the world adored, but Hollywood no longer wanted. Casting directors struggled to see him as anything other than Ralph Malph, and the steady stream of roles he had once enjoyed suddenly went silent. For an actor in his 20s, watching opportunities vanish felt like watching the ground drop from beneath him. He spoke candidly in later years about the fear, confusion, and bouts of depression that followed, the sense of being left behind while others moved forward. Financial insecurity added to the emotional strain. Without consistent work, Most found himself scrambling to reinvent his career. He shifted toward directing and independent filmmaking, hoping to break free from the shadow of Happy Days, yet the path was slow and full of setbacks. The industry's indifference cut deeper than any professional failure. It made him question whether he still belonged in Hollywood at all. During those years, he battled periods of intense self-doubt and isolation, searching for purpose beyond the role that had once defined him. But reinvention came from an unexpected place: music. Most rediscovered his lifelong love for swing and jazz, performing in clubs and recording albums that allowed him to express himself without the weight of expectation. Slowly, he built a second career rooted not in fame, but in authenticity. His later life brought more peace than success, and he embraced it fully. Now, in 2025, Don Most is 72 years old and still alive, performing music, directing small projects, and appearing at nostalgic fan events. Though his journey was marked by typecasting, career droughts, and the emotional fallout of early fame, he has found stability in creativity and a quieter kind of fulfillment. The world remembers Ralph Malph for laughter, and Don Most, after years of searching, has learned to reclaim his own. Linda Pearl as Ashley Pfister. Linda Pearl was born on September 2, 1955, in Greenwich, Connecticut. She was 27 years old when she joined Happy Days in its later seasons as Ashley Pfister, the elegant, sweet-voiced lounge singer who briefly became Fonzie's more mature, emotionally grounded love interest. Though she appeared only for a short arc, her presence brought a softness and sophistication that marked a memorable shift in the show's tone. But while her character seemed poised and in control, Pearl's real life unfolded with far more turbulence. Long before stepping onto the Happy Days set, Pearl had already lived a life filled with constant motion and emotional instability. Raised partly in Japan, she spent her childhood moving between cultures, always feeling slightly displaced, a feeling that later intensified during her early years in Hollywood. While her talent earned her roles, the pressure of being young, visible, and consistently scrutinized took a toll. Behind closed doors, she struggled with anxiety and the relentless need to prove herself in an industry that rarely offered patience or forgiveness. Her personal life carried its own heartbreaks. Pearl endured multiple divorces, each leaving deep emotional scars and forcing her to rebuild her life from the ground up. The collapse of her marriage to actor Desi Arnaz Jr. in 1981 thrust her into public scrutiny at a time when she was already battling insecurity and stress. Later marriages also dissolved, adding years of emotional exhaustion to a career already marked by the unstable rhythms of Hollywood. Through it all, she continued working, appearing in Matlock, The Office, and countless stage productions, even as she privately navigated loneliness and self-doubt. Yet despite the emotional upheavals, Pearl rediscovered resilience through music and theater. Her jazz performances and solo concerts allowed her to reclaim her voice, not as a character, but as herself. Over time, she built a new foundation rooted in creativity rather than survival. A surprising later-life romance with actor Patrick Duffy brought both companionship and healing, offering her a steadiness she had long been denied. Today, Linda Pearl is 69 years old and still alive, continuing to act, sing, and perform with a quiet confidence shaped by decades of reinvention. Though her time on Happy Days was brief, her journey tells a far more powerful story, one of heartbreak, perseverance, and the courage it takes to keep reshaping a life that never followed a straight line. Happy Days once felt safe and joyful, but the truth behind the cast is far more heartbreaking. Some died quietly, others suffered long battles with illness and loss, and only a few remain today to watch time erase the shine of their fame. Their smiles lit up America, yet their tragedies are what linger in our hearts. Which story stays with you the most? Tell us below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold Hollywood journeys.